In a quiet town where the old academy stood with its tall windows and polished marble floors, a story of kindness was born out of what first appeared as an act of cruelty. It was the kind of place where the echo of footsteps carried far down the corridor, where traditions were etched into the very walls, and where young men and women came to prove their worth, discipline, and character. Among those who walked its long halls was a young woman named Elena. She was thoughtful, gentle, and often quiet, carrying herself with humility that made her easy to overlook. Some mistook her gentleness for weakness, and in the rigid environment of the academy, not everyone valued kindness. On one particular morning, when the sun streamed in through the windows and bathed the corridor in light, Elena stood silently as two fellow students approached her with laughter in their eyes. In their hands was a jug filled with cold liquid, and with a grin of mischief, they tipped it over her head. The liquid poured down her hair, ran across her face, and soaked her clothes. The laughter that followed was sharp, echoing like mockery through the corridor. Elena did not shout, did not retaliate. She simply closed her eyes, allowed the coldness to trickle down, and stood with quiet dignity. To the onlookers, it may have seemed like weakness, but inside her heart, something different was stirring. She knew cruelty when she saw it, but she also knew that responding with anger would only fuel the fire. She believed in something stronger, responding with kindness, even when kindness was undeserved. What Elena did not notice immediately was a group of cadets walking down the corridor. They were in uniform, marching with precision, their boots hitting the polished floor in unison. Their leader, Marcus, noticed the scene ahead. His steps slowed as he took in the sight of Elena standing drenched, the laughter of the two women filling the air. The cadets exchanged glances, and their leader's stern face grew even more serious. Marcus stepped forward and asked firmly, "Who did this?" His voice carried authority, and the laughter died instantly. The two women shifted nervously, but before they could answer, Elena lifted her chin slightly, her soaked hair clinging to her face, and whispered, "It doesn't matter." Her words surprised everyone. She could have pointed fingers, she could have demanded justice, but instead she chose mercy. The cadets looked at her with disbelief, and Marcus frowned. "It does matter," he said, his voice strong. "No one should be treated this way." But Elena shook her head softly. "Dignity is not lost by what others do to you. It is lost only if you choose bitterness. I choose not to hate." Her response left the corridor in silence. It was a moment when cruelty met kindness, and kindness chose to shine brighter. The two women, embarrassed and unsettled, quietly slipped away, their laughter gone, replaced with the weight of their own actions. That single act of forgiveness became the foundation of a story that spread far beyond that corridor. For many who had witnessed it, Elena's kindness was more powerful than anger could ever be. Kindness has a way of disarming cruelty, not by force, but by showing that compassion is stronger than hate. That night, as Elena sat in her dormitory, she thought about what had happened. Her clothes had been wet, her pride tested, but her spirit was intact. She wrote in her journal, "Cruelty seeks to humiliate, but kindness transforms humiliation into dignity. Today I learned that the strength of a person is not in how they strike back but in how they choose to heal, even when wounded." As the weeks turned into months, Elena's quiet kindness continued to shape the people around her. When she saw someone struggling in training, she offered encouragement. When she noticed a cadet sitting alone in the cafeteria, she joined them, making sure no one felt invisible. Small gestures, but powerful ones. She believed kindness did not need to be grand or loud, it only needed to be sincere. And slowly, the culture around her began to shift. The cadets who had once mocked her began to respect her. Even Marcus, who had been trained to see strength only in toughness, began to see that true strength also lived in kindness. He often found himself recalling her words in that corridor, realizing they held a wisdom far beyond her years. One day, during a grueling training session, a younger cadet collapsed from exhaustion. Many were too focused on their own performance to notice, but Elena rushed to the cadet's side. She knelt beside him, offering her water, whispering encouragement. "You're stronger than you think," she told him. "Don't give up. This pain will pass, but the pride of finishing will stay forever." The cadet, inspired by her words, found the strength to continue. Later, he would say that it wasn't the water that revived him, but the kindness in her voice that gave him new energy. Stories of Elena's compassion began to ripple beyond the academy. Visiting officers heard of the young woman who led not with force, but with kindness. Some doubted at first, believing kindness was weakness, but when they met her, they saw in her eyes a fire that proved otherwise. Kindness, in her, was not passive, it was powerful, deliberate, and unbreakable. Over the years, Elena faced many challenges. She failed some exams, stumbled in physical drills, and endured the whispers of those who still doubted her. Yet she never allowed failure to harden her heart. Instead, every failure became a lesson in patience, every obstacle an opportunity to show compassion, not only to others but also to herself. She believed kindness also meant forgiving yourself when you falter, learning to rise again without self-hatred. Her journey eventually led her to become one of the youngest leaders in the academy. She walked once more through that same sunlit corridor, not as a victim of cruelty, but as a symbol of resilience and compassion. The walls that had once echoed with laughter at her humiliation now echoed with respect for her strength. She carried no grudge against the women who had mocked her years before. In fact, when one of them approached her later, ashamed and remorseful, Elena embraced her warmly and said, "We all make mistakes. What matters is what we choose next." That simple act of forgiveness brought tears to the woman's eyes, and from that day on, she too began to live differently, spreading kindness in her own way. The legacy of kindness that Elena built was not about grand speeches or dramatic gestures. It was about the accumulation of small, genuine acts, listening, helping, forgiving, encouraging. She believed the world was often starved for kindness because people underestimated its power. Yet she proved that kindness could change lives, shift cultures, and inspire generations. Even Marcus, who had once thought strength was only found in command, confessed years later that Elena had taught him the greatest lesson of leadership. That to be a true leader is to care, to show kindness even when it is hard. For anyone who hears Elena's story, there is a lesson to carry. Life will present moments of cruelty, of mockery, of unfairness. You may find yourself standing in your own corridor, drenched in humiliation, with others laughing at your expense. In that moment, you hold a choice. You can let bitterness define you, or you can let kindness transform you. You may not always control what happens to you, but you can always control how you respond. Kindness is not weakness. It is strength refined by compassion, power shaped by mercy, and courage guided by love. The world often celebrates victories won through force, but the quiet victories of kindness leave deeper marks. They ripple outward, touching lives you may never see, inspiring hearts you may never know. Just as Elena's choice that day in the corridor inspired countless others, your kindness too can become a story told long after the moment has passed. So the next time cruelty crosses your path, remember Elena. Remember the cold liquid poured down her head, the laughter that tried to break her, and the simple words she chose instead: "It doesn't matter. I will not hate." Remember that kindness is not about denying pain, but about transforming it. It is not about ignoring injustice, but about choosing dignity. It is about believing that compassion is stronger than cruelty and proving it through your actions. Let your kindness be the light in someone else's dark day. Let it be the water for someone's thirst, the hand that helps them rise, the forgiveness that frees them from shame. For in the end, what defines a life well lived is not the medals won, the titles earned, or the applause gathered, but the kindness shared, the hearts touched, and the love given freely. That is the story Elena lived, and that is the story we are all capable of living. And perhaps one day, when you walk down your own corridor of trials, someone will see your kindness, be moved by it, and carry it forward. For kindness, once given, never truly ends, it becomes part of the endless tale of humanity's greatest strength.